through multilingual poetry and art forms that complement poetry. Today is our 17th Kaavyaalaap session and our 9th Vaisistya session. Kaavyaalaap has been organized by the Consciousness Studies program at the National Institute of Advanced Studies, Bengaluru, and conceptualized and conducted by a team consisting of Professor Sangeeta Menon, who is the Dean of School of Humanities and the head of the Consciousness Studies program at the Institute, Dr. Shankar Rajaraman, who is a doctor by training, a poet by passion, and he's also a postdoctoral fellow at the Institute, and Meera and I are doctoral scholars. Previously, as a part of Vaisistya sessions, we have had scholars speak to us on various topics, which included Persian, Prakrit, Sanskrit poetry, introducing us to the concepts of Dhwani, poetry and music, poetry and sculpture, and likewise. Today, we have with us Srimati Rukmini Vijaykumar, a renowned Bharatanatyam exponent, introducing us to Vachika Abhinaya in Bharatanatyam on how emotive trajectories are of prime importance in dance poetry and how lyrics play a big role in creation of rasa in the viewer. With this, I would request Dr. Shankar to formally introduce the speaker and request her to begin the session. Over to you, Shankar sir.
Thank you, Preet. It gives me great delight to welcome Rukmini Vijayakumar. Mrs. Rukmini Vijayakumar is the artistic director of Radha Kalpa Dance Company and the director of Lashwa, a creative space for artists in the heart of Bangalore. She is the founder of the Radha Kalpa method, an educational system for Bharatanatyam that is based on the idea of neutrality. I have personally known Mrs. Rukmini Vijayakumar for several years now, and have had the pleasure of writing lyrics for some of her dance compositions, mostly translating lyrics written in English by her into Sanskrit. She has received accolades and praise for her performance from several quarters. According to Alastair Macaulay from the New York Times, Rukmini has burning eyes that repeatedly catch the observer's breath, and she makes those eyes part of the fabric of her dance. She is not just engaging, but also authoritative. Today, Rukmini Vijayakumar shall speak on the topic Vachika Abhinaya in Bharatanatyam, based on one of the 4 forms of Abhinaya listed by Bharata: Angika, Vachika, Aharya, and Satvika. Specifically, she shall talk on how lyrics and poetry aid dance. With these few introductory words, I request Mrs. Rukmini Vijayakumar to begin her talk. The talk shall last for the next 50 to 55 minutes, followed by an interactive session. Over to you, Rukmini.
Namaste, everyone. Thank you for having me here this afternoon. And I'm glad to be sharing amidst people, poets, and not dancers, which is usually my audience. I will go through just in short the idea of Vachika Abhinaya and how it plays a role according to how I have experienced it with choreography and presentation and creation. As you all are well aware, in the Natya Shastra, there are 4 abhinayas that we use to communicate. And abhinayas are just tools for communication. So the Angika, Vachika, Aharya, and Satvika. The Angika largely encompasses everything that we do with our own bodies. That is the performer or actor's bodies. So whether we stand a certain way, tilt our head, move our eyes, including expressions on the face, all of this becomes Angika Abhinaya. Vachika is words, and this is something that I often say is that Vachika becomes Vachika Abhinaya for the stage only when it is also understood by the people who are there in the audience, right? So suppose the audience comprises of a primarily Telugu speaking population and they have no idea what Hindi is, and you do everything in Hindi, then in my opinion, it no longer is Vachika Abhinaya because it communicates nothing. Because Abhinaya literally means a tool to communicate, right? It's a tool to lead to word. And in some ways, I will explain how I perceive Abhinayas as no longer fitting in that category based on whether they communicate with that particular audience or not. Okay, so now Vachika is words, and words, language, any language that communicates. But this also depends on the pre-existing things that are in the world outside, right? We don't create anything new in the theater. The theater is a reflective space, it's a metaphorical space, and we take things that are in the world outside and we bring it into the theater, and in the theater we make it similar to, based on the world outside, but then we make it art because of the way we represent, the way we aesthetically modify, the way we adapt certain idioms, certain archetypes into either a specific movement vocabulary, a specific way of presenting. I speak largely with movement vocabulary because that's what I know. Or it could be with sculpture, or art, or painting, whatever it is. But in dance, we adapt it to a specific movement vocabulary, right? So if there's water flowing, there's something that we do with our body that makes it look and seem like water. But if there was no water outside, then we wouldn't be able to create water on stage, right? So this is a reflective kind of space that metaphorically represents the world outside, such that the members of the audience are taken on a journey and on a, an emotional, emotive, introspective journey through the course of a performance. Now there is angika, which is our body, vachika, which is words, and we can choose to use the different languages that are there in the world outside. And according to me, it literally means things that are spoken, things that are written, lyrics, prose, all of that falls under vachika. Aharya is everything that is embellished, like stage, lights, props, costumes. People often think Aharya is just jewelry and costumes. It's not. It's everything that's embellished, including the lights, including, when you watch a horror movie, there's a deep tone, and then there's a hum drum, and suddenly there's a flash of something. All of that is aharya. If you mute a horror movie, nothing's going to happen, right? So suddenly you'll be like, oh, it's not so frightening anymore. So that all of that becomes aharya. Anything that is embellished, anything that is shown. And satvika is the only one. See, now all these three, angika, vachika, aharya, all three of these abhinayas have this necessity in the audience. Like the audience needs to infer based on previous experience. If I dim the lights on stage and I put some, I don't know, some shiny things, you presume that it's dark or that it's night or we have a blue light. But if you haven't experienced night, this aharya of night will make no impression on you because you don't know what night is, right? So now with Satvika, however, Satvika is the only Abhinaya that happens in the same time and space as the performance itself, which is why it's unique. It's so different, right? So now in the scope of these four Abhinayas, Satvika largely depends on the performer, the skill of the performer, and their mindset and their ability to be in the present moment, such that their imagination fools their own body. So you must have seen the Satvika Vinayas in the Nachastra enumerated. They're all things like goosebumps and tears and face turning red, voice changing in tone. All of these things that happen involuntarily because of you fooling yourself, fooling your own body. Your own body gets fooled by this imagination that's there, right? You believe that this person is going to attack you and you actually get scared and you tremble. So it's not an indication of trembling that happens. An indication of trembling that you show with your hand becomes angika, but when you actually tremble it becomes satvika, right? So we rarely see satvika. Like it's very fleeting most of the time in most performances. So performances are largely carried on angika, vachika, and aharya. All these three things are controlled by the director, by the choreographer, and they can be well thought out. And the choreographer and director can decide, I'm going to communicate this through Angika, this through Vachika, this through Aharya. And through these things, the entire story will unfold. Obviously, as dancers, we are Angika heavy, and the other two also exist, but they exist in moments where we choose them to exist. Now, speaking about Vachika Abhinaya specifically and its role in Bharatanatyam. Now, I'm going to talk about Vachika and largely in theatre, and then I will move it to Bharatanatyam. In Bharatanatyam, what happens is we have many javalis, many padams, varanams that are part of this Margam tradition that has come about after the time of the Tanja Quartet. It's the post Chola rule around that time. And this Margam format was formed, and then we would present these padams, javalis, and these javalis actually came from these um, Telugu kings, and then the Padams came from largely, originally they came from Kshetraya. So they came from different places. I think Javalis also came from Karnataka initially. I'm confused. So Javalis, I think, also came from Karnataka, but Padams definitely came from they. A lot of them they're famous as Kshetraya Padams. Okay, now what happens with these Padams and Javalis is that there is a Pallavi and an Anupallavi. We're used to this in the Carnatic music format, right? And then there are two Charanams. The Pallavi and Anupallavi, what happens is that we repeat it when we dance again and again. So let's say, for example, um, Chudare Adi Nadache Hoyalu Sudati Seyujadu. That's a padam that says, look at her, see how she walks, and she seems very you know, I don't know that jaralu in English what it is. Haughty or self, she thinks she's really cool. She thinks she's it. Okay, so that's what she's saying. So that's the first line of the padam. Then Adadi Kulaka. So the next line says she's from a. So what the Pallavi does is it establishes the tone of the entire Padam or Chavali. The Anupallavi elaborates why this is. So it says she's from a well-known family. Okay, and she pretends to be her mother-in-law's perfect daughter-in-law. Okay, so that's the second line. Okay, Adadi Kulakanta Attaninti Kodalu. Um, yeah, so that this elaborates the first line. So the first line says what the whole thing is about. Then the charanams, each of the charanams will elaborate on that particular idea. So it'll go on to say, I'll give you an example of few more padams and you can obviously find them and read them. But each of the charanams then will elaborate on this particular idea. So you said, you see how she's walking, she thinks she's the best thing that happened to this world, and she's from an amazing family, and she pretends to be the mother in law's perfect daughter in law. But in reality, what she does is she goes and she escapes to see Krishna, right? So basically, you're saying she's a cheater, and but see, she pretends to be amazing. Now, the next two verses, the Charanams, basically back up this idea. So the Pallavi and the Anupallavi are the ones that we repeat the most in dance. So if I say Chudare and I say see how she's walking, then I'll say see, she has a long braid. Then I'll say, oh my God, she's going to him. And then she's saying, hi. It's like, this is just too much. Then you will continue on that idea. So there's a subtext that happens, which is kind of the inverse of a subtext that happens in theater. Right? So in theater, what happens? The lines will change. Right? And as the lines change, there is also a subtext. So what you will say is like, let's say now in this particular I've choreographed this in a setting where this girl wants her friend to kind of empathize with her view on this other woman, okay, that she's actually jealous of. So if it was in theater, what would happen is that I would say, hey, look at that girl, see what she's doing, and the friend would say, yeah, whatever. Then you say, no, I mean, see, look, she's come in a palanquin and she's getting off there. Then the friends say, do you want oranges or you want apples? I'm buying some for my house. Okay. So it's in a marketplace. So the friend is like basically ignoring. She say, oh my God, I can't believe she's worn stilettos to Sadashiv Nagar marketplace. It's like, I mean, and the friend is not even looking at this woman. The friend is like, look, these apples look a bit better. I'm not sure which one. Which ones do you want? And she's like, look, and she's trying to get her friend's attention. She say, look, she's one of those stilettos, and now she's like, her sari, her pallu is not even pinned up. I mean, like, who does that? All the men are gawking at her. Look, like, it's just, and the friend is continuing with her business, and this woman's walking behind her and continuing trying to make her friend empathize with her. Now, what happens is in theater, these lines change, right? So, what I say to my friend keeps changing. But in Bharatanatyam, because we rely on that Pallavi just giving us the base of the idea. We don't rely on it to elaborate. The elaboration we do with our how we choose the emotive story to happen. So this emotive story, the Chudare Adi Nadache Hoilu, will continue again and again. I'll repeat like maybe 10, 15, 20 times. And each time I will try to tell my friend the context of where it is, where I place it. Sometimes the lyrics give a hint, but other times we don't exactly know. We don't really know that it's in a marketplace or it could be in the town center. But we read the lyrics to see where it could potentially be based on the theatrical integrity, right? So if you're saying she's there and see how she's behaving, she comes in a palanquin, I presume that it's in an outside place. So the next verse says, see, she's married to a guy who is he's not some normal guy, he's a nice guy, he's strong, I think he's in the army, and she and then she takes him for a ride. And in there they are wealthy, they have a big house, and she comes in a palanquin, she has people to take care of her hand and foot, and she goes back in a palanquin. This is what the charanam says. And then it goes back to Chudare, right? So Chudare is the base idea. Now what I personally believe, or what I think is right in terms of this overall emotional trajectory, is that the person who is saying this, there's always a tone of voice, the um, whose voice any of these padams or javalis represent. Like, for example, there's another, I'll give you a very popular javali. Okay. It says, Era, Rara, Chaitevai, Marubaniki, Talagulia. So basically, it says, Era, come quickly. The Manmatha's arrows are piercing my heart. Okay. Marajanaka Sukumara Sundara. He continues to say. And he says, the father of Manmatha. That means, in my opinion, that means Marajanaka means one who gives birth to desire. Sukumara Sundara, you're so beautiful. Valachinanu Pilachin. I've come and I'm calling you Irarara. Okay. Now, in my opinion, she is calling, right? So now she's calling here. In the other one, she's telling her friend, look at her. Theatrically speaking, whenever there needs to be so much said, right, from one character to another character, that's a lot of pages, that's a lot of words. We are not those aunties on the phone just picking up and just talking continuously, right? Like, we just keep talking, talking, talking. We don't even know if the other person's listening. So that's not what we want in our lyrics or dance or poetry. There is a theatrical tension that needs to be created, which allows this to happen. So I keep saying Chudare to my friend because obviously she's not looking, she's not listening. I'm trying to convince her, I'm trying for her to empathize with me. So even in theater, this is how any scene, any film, any movie, anything that is there, this is how any scene is made. There is one person who wants something from the other person, and the other person is not giving it to them, and then the scene happens. So it's like saying, I want to leave. I'll say, let me go. And then the other person will say, hey, but have you tried the cheesecake? And I'll say, no, I really need to go. I'm getting late for work. He say, oh God, you know what? I forgot to tell you. There's this person, and the other person wants this person to stay, right? And then she said, no, oh, I know that person that's saying, I'll have the cheesecake later. She said, no, you must have the cheesecake. You must have it. So you say, okay, fine, pack it for me. So as she's packing it, she's like, oh, now I've lost this war. Let me figure out another way to make this person stay. So that's when a scene happens in anything, like in theater, in dance, in all of this. Even these padams and javalis, we don't think of it because the other person is imaginary, because this is a solo performing art. But actually, the other person has reactions. There is a scene happening, there is a conflict. So, only when the conflict happens can the scene happen and can the next line come. All right. So, we'll take, for example, since it's Sanskrit, we'll take an Ashtapadi, right? So, you all know Jayadeva's Ashtapadis, and I like that one particularly, which is Yahi Madhava, Yahi Keshava, Mavada Kaitava Vada. Okay. And then she says, we use that as the Pallavi when we are dancing. Okay. Tam Anusara Sarasi Ruhalochana, Yatava Harati Vishada. So then she says, go behind her. She will take care of all your illness. Now you have to ask yourself, does Radha actually want Krishna to go with her? No. What's her intention? She wants him to say, what does she want from? There's always something that this person, who is the person who is saying the words, wants something from the other person who is receiving these words. The other person who is receiving these words are not giving this person what they want. Hence the conflict, hence the words, right? And in this, we establish a Pallavi, which is the main needing intention. There's the main poking thing. So, Yahi Madhava, Yahi Keshava is the main thing. She's saying go away. So people are saying, no, she asks him to go away. No, that's not at all what it is. When you say it's okay, I don't need anything from you. Think about it in your life. When you say it's okay, I don't need anything from you. Is that really what you mean? It's not at all what you mean. Humans are so complicated. So we never say that's not, I don't need anything from you. That's not true. So you definitely want them. You want them to say, no, I'll do it for you. Don't worry. So now when she says, Yahi Madhava, Yahi Keshava, Mavada Kaitava Vadam, Tam Anusara Sarasi Ruhalochana. So she says, don't tell me your lies. Go away. Go away, Krishna. Don't speak to me. Tamanusara Sarasi. She's checking whether he likes her or not. Tamanusara, go with her, the one with the blooming eyes. She'll take care of all your pain. Why are you here with me? Right? And then she continues on. If she was done with that and she didn't have anything else to say, she would open the door and push him out. Yes, if it was somebody that you didn't care about, that's exactly what you'll do, right? If it's like some, like in these Hindi movies, some auto guy will come, some fellow who's on that in the college, your classmate will come behind you like a stalker. In real life, women don't like these people. They push them out, right? Women will be like, bye, I don't want you, go away, and they leave them. Like, but that's not, if you're talking to Krishna or talking to this person for a long time, it's obviously someone you care about, right? So you go on to the next line. And then she says, Bahiriva, in the finally at the end, she says, Bahiriva Malina Taram Tava Krishna, Manopi Bhavishyati Nuna. That's the last line. That because Radha is smart, she has a cutting line, which is Bahiriva Malinataram. Like your heart is darker than your skin. But before that, um, she says, have flowers blossomed in your heart. And when she says, have flowers blossomed in your heart, is it has love sprouted for the other woman? And then she says, I see the nail marks on your skin. What is this? So now between each line, there is a theatrical integrity. Why does she say the nail marks? That is for us to decide as performers. Maybe the cloth of his shoulder came off and I saw the nail marks. And then I say, see, the nail marks on your skin. What has happened last night? Then I'll see him, I'll look at his face and say, your eyes are drooping, right? Your eyes are closing. Don't tell me you were awake because don't tell me you were sleeping or you fell asleep because you're sleepy now. You look drunk with love, right? So there are these things, and she continues the conversation, and each line leads to the next line. And Ashtapadi has a slightly different format, but essentially it's the same thing, because we can consider each of these lines as the way the charanams are in a javali or a padam, because they elaborate that main thought, which is Yahi Madhava, Yahi Keshava, Mavada Kaitava Vadam. And the Anupallavi, which is the Tam Anusara, this is the poking line where she says, go to her. And she's waiting for him to say, no, I won't go to her. Please have me back. He doesn't say anything. He's just standing there, guilty. So then she continues. She continues with everything. And she says all the words until she says the darkest, meanest thing. And she says, Bahiriva Malina Taram Tava Krishna. Manopi Bhavishyati Nuna. Katamata Vanchayase. I forgot the next line. Asama, from when I was young. You're all Sanskrit scholars. I can't say anything wrong, Sanskrit wise. So, Jana Manugata Asama Sharat Jvaradunam. So, from how can you cheat or deceive someone who has um, been with the fire of longing from when she was born. So when she says Bahireva Malinataram, it's like it's the meanest thing to say. You say everyone says you're Krishna, you're so beautiful, but that's dirty, she says. So I think it's beautiful, and the emotional progression in these Ashtapadis is amazing because of the way it's so well thought out and such detailed attention to human emotive reasoning, right? So now what happens with Vachika Abhinaya and dance is that it provides a base. Now, on top of this base, we build our what do you say, kind of story, and it leaves it open. And if you look at one padam, many of us will interpret it differently, in different ways, sometimes in different places. Some of these padams, because they're ambiguous of where it happens, some of them will be placed inside a house, some of them will be placed outside a house, some of them will be placed in an ambiguous open setting, depending on the way the choreographer wants to um, represent this. Like there's other padam where it says Samayamide Rara Nasami Tamasinchakura. Okay, so she says now is the time for you to come. Don't delay. Okay. Now she continues on in the charanam. Then she says Magadu Ura Ledura. Na Mamagara Joli Leda. So basically, my husband's not in town and my father in law can't hear. You know all of this, and still, why are you pretending, like whiling away your time? Okay. Then she goes on. The next Sharanam says, see that the Chandran, when the moon sets, our time to be together will no longer be there, you know and is that what you want? So the two charanams elaborate. So samayamide. So I chose, in every time I choreograph I interpret it differently, but one of the times that I did, I chose to place start her off in the house, and I wanted a reason for her to say samayamide. So when she says samayamide and this guy is in love with her, why is he not coming? It makes no sense to me, right? She's going on, she keeps on saying, Samayamide, and this guy's refusing to come. Which guy in his right senses will refuse? So I was thinking there must be a reason. I have to have a reason why he's refusing. So I said, so we all make these precursors, to kind of set the tone before the lyrics start. So I chose in my choreography to say, she starts off in the house, and then she bids farewell to her husband. Her husband goes away, and when she starts off in the house, she comes ready, and this lover of hers knocks on the door, which is Krishna. She knocks on the door, and she knows this back door is used only for that. She's like, why is he knocking now? Everyone's at home. And she goes and opens the door, and this guy is there, and she says, no, please go now, go. And he's like, come on, come. And she's like, no, get away. And she just shuts the door on his face. So now obviously this fellow is hurt. Ego, right? Male ego. So much ego, so much hurt, so much pain. So then he goes away, and then she sends her husband off, and her husband's gone, and now she says, okay, now I have my time. Let me go to Krishna. So then she goes to the back door and she finds Krishna, and Krishna standing there like sulking and upset. So this is my interpretation. And she goes and she says, Samayamide, right? So she says, Samayamide, Rarana. Why are you delaying? And he's like, go. Like he doesn't even look at her. So then she has to go in and she says, hey, what's the problem? Come, now's the time. Samayamide. Rarana Sami, Tamasinjay, this whining away, looking there, being upset. Don't do. Don't do all this. So the subtext keeps changing for us in our minds. That's what we do choreographically. Now, all the lyrics that allow us as performers to do this become amazing lyrics because they don't actually give everything. It just says Samayamide. It doesn't say she went in the house was locked, the door opened squeakily, his head showed inside, and as his head peeped in, she saw his curly locks and she said. So these things the lyrics don't give us. These are things that we do. This is our job because we need only half the information. The Vachika is one part, the Angika is the big chunk, right? And then now the Aharya is there, the music, the Ragam, how the musician renders it, or the tonality of the singer, all these things also give a certain amount of information. So the Vachika, it is important to have the base tone and the elaborate tones. So I'll give you some examples of the ones that I have written that actually Shankarana has translated. One of them is Apasara Niranuraga Shambhu. This one I think everyone likes a lot because I based it on my mom and dad, but I made it about Shiva and Parvati. Okay, so here, unlike normal padams, I have both of them speaking, and there is a pallavi, there's a bass tone for both the characters, which is a bit adventurous, but I thought it's really nice to dance to. So Parvati keeps saying Appasara Niranuga Raga Shambhu. She's like, you don't love me anymore. Shiva's bass tone is Nijam Aparadham Na Janami Boho. So Shiva is saying, I don't even know what's wrong. I don't know the real reason for your upset. Please tell me. And she keeps saying, go away, Shiva. And Shiva keeps saying, I don't know what's the problem. Go away. I don't know what's the problem. Go away. So now she keeps elaborating. So each time she says, Upahritani na kusumani na ruchiram. Like you didn't bring me the flowers. But he says, see, Nandi is sick. I can't go and bring those flowers that you want. Nandi rujama tanute kante. Then she says, you don't dance with me anymore. Then he says, you're my wife. Why should I ask you to dance with me? Do you need a formal invitation for you to dance? And then she says, but you are in meditation and you don't even speak to me. I keep talking to you. And not only that, you smile to yourself. This was based on my dad watching TV and my mom keeping on calling him. And then she'll say, you're just so engrossed in that TV, you don't even respond. But Shiva meditates. So she's like, Shiva, you're meditating and you're not even responding to me. So Shiva says, there's inner joy when I'm meditating and that makes me happy. That's why I smile. And you know that these external things don't, like I can't hear them. So the same the Pallavi of both of them, or the refrain of both of them, you can call it Pallavi or whatever from the musical standpoint, all these charanams elaborate that basic refrain where she says, go away. She's giving reasons why she wants him to go away. And he is giving reasons why he doesn't understand what the problem is. Because according to him, whatever he's done is right. She's saying, I'm meditating. What's the problem? And then she says, Anandi is ill. I didn't bring you flowers. He says, you go away early, you come back late. What can I do? I have so much work. So this is the purpose of the Pallavi and then the Charanams. So finally, there's always a resolution in these where sometimes the lyrics give the resolution. Sometimes it's the performer's choice, like now in the Ashtapadi where she says your heart is baser black than your skin or darker than your skin. I can choose the resolution to be where she shuts the door on Krishna, Or I can choose a resolution to be where she's so broken down that Krishna comes and holds her. Or she shuts the door, waits, opens the door, goes out, and finds Krishna again. I've done all of them based on my mood. So the resolution need not be in the lyrics. It is something that comes through the performer's or choreographer's interpretation of that. It usually leaves it in most places open ended, you know. Even in Samayamide, it's open ended. So at the end, the second charanam goes, and you can start with Samayamide. And when she says Samayamide, it can be like, see, I told you now's the time. Or it could be like, fine, go. And the Pallavi need not come again, right? So that becomes the way that the choreographer takes the emotive trajectory to move. Now, in the um, charanams, what happens is, like, I'll give you another example. This is like, it says this Madu mekum kanne ni poga venda sunne. Like this also, there are two characters speaking. Poga vendum taye tade soladiniye. So now both of them want opposite things. Like she says, don't go. He says, I need to go. Then she tries to convince him. She tries to convince Krishna. And he's a small kid. Don't go outside. Don't go to tend the cows. And he says, I need to go. So now what happens is, as it moves, there are every character, every person has what we call them, I don't know, we call them tactics in theater. So we have a way to get what we want, right? So like, and I always use children as an example because they're the most blatant, easy. Adults are so complicated. So if like the mom says no chocolate for you, the kid will sit like this first. Can I just have one? And she'll say, no, 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 no chocolate, no, I'm sorry. And then she say, but only one. I'm not asking, only one chocolate. They say, no, I told you no. Then she'll say, but can I'll eat my dinner fully today. Like, as though that's a bargain. She's like, I'll eat my full dinner. So he's like, you'll eat your dinner. But okay, you eat your dinner, then I'll give you a chocolate. No, but I want it now. Please. Please. Please, mama, please, please. So then there's begging. Right? So begging is one tactic. Reasoning, I'll eat dinner, begging. Then after that, tantrum. Ah, no, you always do this. You're the worst mom in the world. You never gave me chocolate. I hate you. You gave this thing. I don't know, all this drama. Then again, trying to gain empathy. Ouch, I hurt my foot. All this will happen in between. I hurt my foot and, because he's kicked the table, and a lot of crying for nothing. So these are tactics. And this is what we use even in lyrics and poetry for dance. So we change the tactics. And the tactics that are changed are not necessarily changed in the lyrics themselves. They are changed in the emotive layering when the Pallavi is repeated. So the Pallavi must allow for this elaboration to happen. Like all these lines, like say, Samayamide na swami, Samayamide rara na swami tamasinju. It leaves everything open. Now is the time. I can say, now is the time. Now is the time. Like I can say, so I can say, what are you doing there while you away? So there is a lot of leeway. So, Madu mekum kanni ni poga venna. Don't go. Please don't go. See, you're a little kid. So it can change. There's an array based on which point they are in that trajectory of emotion and what they're getting. And it's not random. It's very clear how it progresses. And I think that the more we observe life, the easier it is to make clear these choices. Okay, so with Vachika now, there's one more point I want to make before which after which we can take some questions. When there is Vachika Abhinaya in performance, we use it sparingly sometimes, especially because we have such varying audiences, right? So sometimes we try to communicate with Angika what cannot be communicated with Vachika. You must have noticed if you've gone to a Bharatanatyam performance, many times they'll come on stage and they'll explain the lyrics, you know, and we do that because we depend a good portion on the Vachika to communicate some parts of it. And if the Vachika is not understood, then what happens is that some part of our performance is lost, and some portions of it are, like they've, they've fallen away to the wayside. And when that happens, it's less possible for this rasa to happen, because only when all four abhinayas exist hand in hand, side by side, playing their part or playing their role, can we hope for the sthayi to happen. And once that happens, rasa can happen. But if the vachika doesn't play its role, like for example, like when I give you that example of just having a Hindi audience and we do something in Kannada, then the vachika's role suddenly becomes redundant, like it doesn't communicate anything. So this is something that we think about as performers, like, or we need to think about as performers, to see how do we circumvent that, how do we balance it. Now, what portion of the vachika do we transfer to angika, what portion of it do we transfer to the music, to the tonality, to rhythm, how much do we transfer to aharya, such that this balance is there and they can still understand uh, the overall import of what is being danced. And sometimes we choose to explain the poetry or the lyrics at the beginning of a performance such that it is communicated clearly. So that is it from me. Now I would like to take questions.
Thank you, Rukmini ji, for so eloquently putting this up. I think it was so interesting. Started off, it is really interesting to hear your perspectives on Angika, Vachika, Ahari, and Satvika. Though you said, I'm sure a lot of us had various ideas of what is dominant, but as a performer, you said it is mostly Angika and Vachika and Ahari and the periphery, and Satvika is there probably. I think that is what you said. And it is beautiful that you drew examples. You got in Kritis, Devaranamas, Ashtapatis, also folk tunes like Madu Mekam Kanne. So covering a whole repertoire of Carnatic, also various genres within Carnatic music. And I really liked when you said that I interpret it differently every time I take it up. I think that's the beauty of a dancer, that you have that space of expression, that you could take the same line or the same piece and probably perform it in differently in every performance. And I've seen that also. I have a question. I think we'll open with it's just a small query. How important it is for you to understand a language? Because I remember Bangalore Nagaratnamal not touching certain, she said she would not sing Sanskrit songs because she never learned Sanskrit. So is there how the dynamics behind for a dancer, how important it is to learn a language or really understand the lyrics, because you're not just a dancer, you're also a composer or a choreographer. So do you learn the language, or is it only the context, the history, what is involved in making a piece of a language which is not known to you? Yeah, that's the.
I think understanding the lyrics is very important, because that's where the base comes from. Because it's not just the lyrics. See, like many of these padams and compositions, right? They have a rhythmic tonality to it also. And these might not be things that an audience member will notice immediately, but everything falls to the rhythm in Bharatanatyam. So if you say Maadu mekyum kanne ni poga vendam son, so everything, the eye, the head, it comes on, sometimes on the va, sometimes the thing make you, and it's sometimes it becomes intuitive, but it's very important to know the rhythm of the lyrics itself. And one is the rhythm, Second is the meaning, because even if we have layered meaning, we have a rule that it needs to fall on that word itself. This is something that is very, very important. So even if I say, like for Mm, we'll say Madu mekum kanne. Say, so if I say Madu mekum kanne, ni poga vendam sonne. I can't do wait, I have to think to do it wrong. Madu mekum kanne, ni poga vendam sonne. Like it's suddenly like it's off. You can't do that. So I have to say Madu mekum kanne is address. So, Madu mekum kanne ni poga vendam. Vendam is maybe don't go inside. Sonne, I'm telling you. So, on the sonne, the lyrics, it has to coincide with my emotional layering. I may have interpreted each time. Madu mekum kanne ni, just go. Poga vendam sonne. It can also be ni poga vendam. Enough. Don't talk to me. Sonne, but that is also on the lyrics. So understanding the lyrics is of prime importance. So I don't know Telugu very well. I'm much better with Kannada, and actually Sanskrit is better than Tamil for me also. But the I have to look through all the lyrics, because you can't choose to chuck out one language because you don't know it. Because there's so much poetry, there's so much literature in every language. It just takes a little bit more time. So I listen to it more, I read it more, I'll I think about it more. And sometimes it's we don't understand the innuendo in some languages, right? So that's why we have people like I bother Shankar Anna a lot. So I'll bug him and I'll say, "What is this?" And sometimes he'll be like, "Oh my God, they sung it completely wrong." Sometimes, and I'll be like, "Oh God, what do I do now? I have to dance to this." So there is it's important to have someone as a reference personal, so that you can understand the lyrics fully. Understanding it is the first
Important.
thing. Yeah, I think it's always the first thing. Yeah.
Thank you, Rukmini ji. I think we are open for for comments and questions. If there are any questions, you could either raise your hands, put it up on chat box. In that space, I would like to acknowledge presence of Professor Arindam Chakrabarti. Sir is here. He's a renowned professor. He's currently a faculty at University of Stony Brook, USA. And I think he's specially here to, he's here for your talk, Rukmini ji. Sir, any comments from your side? I'm unmuting you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Right. Just one small correction. During the pandemic, I came back to my 25-year-old position at University of Hawaii. So I'm back here. I still sort of keep teaching Abhinav Gupta's texts to the Stony Brook folks, just pro bono like that. And of course, I really learned a lot. I actually told a couple of my PhD students who are here, who are writing on the Natya Shastra and more from a Western and comparative point of view. And I think they benefited also from this class. Especially everybody now writes and talks and demonstrates about rasa in a very general way. But I found some subtleties. I was looking at, the chapters 16 and others of Natya Shastra before, because there are 2 chapters on Vag Abhinaya, on Vachika and all that, where all the chandas and everything comes. And but the Ashtapadi that you took as an example, I can't address, as you're very right in the very beginning. It has to be specific to the language. One has to have command over language. Just one minor comment there, like Preet was talking about understanding. Now, normally outside of dance, drama, and poetry, understanding means understanding as meaning definitively, knowing this is the meaning, not anything else. But what you showed, demonstrated, is that to understand an elaboratable, something that which can be elaborated further, which is the only way the lyrics of a dance piece or a theater dance piece or a, TYA Nritya kind of piece, not TTA. So can go is that to understand it is to know the Vyanjana places, the Dhwani places, the gaps where you have scope. So it's a very peculiar, in the theory of meaning in the linguistic part, one could get from this an entire research domain of how correct understanding means open understanding.
Yeah.
Okay, open but not completely open. Okay, so there is that limitation. It's very similar to any classical music. The alapana and the kalpana surams, and in Hindustani music, the bharat, which is within very strict limits. Okay, in Arohan, you touch this, you don't touch that in Avarohan, all that rules. But within that rules, the scope of the elaboration and the amount from it, it's coming from a dancer, it's a different thing. When we theoreticians say that, they think we are just, valorizing the tradition. Oh, it gives a lot of improvisation things and all that, because the actual dancers don't. But to see that an actual practicing dancer who is realistic enough to say that, look, you can't just sweat at will. It only happens very, very occasionally. Sattvika is rare. Okay, somebody as practical and as contemporary as that, when she says, even now, with all the contemporaneity and all the straitjacketing and all the reproduction that makes, everybody go crazy with imitating. Everything is just, everybody imitates everything. The scope that not only for different, Padma Subramaniam and Sarukkai, Malvika Sarukkai, and Rukmini will dance the same understanding fully. All of them have equally understood what Yai, Madhava, Yai, Keshava means. Okay? But because they understand equally, they will each interpret differently. So this is not just for dance, this is for the entire culture. There is a lesson. And I got 2 lessons, which partly I'm also for the benefit of, these PhD people who are doing under Sangeeta or whoever working. One is writing commentaries is not just, talking heads doing that. Our tradition is a commentary writing tradition because it is in commentary that you do your original work. So when Rukmini is writing, is doing a commentary, if emotional, bodily commentary on a single Ashtapadi that has been sung at least 10,000 times and played, people will think, oh, this is the traditional part of that. Yes, it is traditional, but the tradition is to allow and encourage and in fact mandate that everyone does it differently. And so a dance, a particular performance is a new commentary that you're writing with your body. I didn't know this before. Hearing the talk, I'm understanding. That's one thing. About that, just I'll say one about that example. Lee Siegel, my colleague, translated Jayadeva's Gita Govinda for the clay series, that the green series with the English on the Sanskrit on the side and English on this side. And it's now become the standard. When he was doing that, he was my colleague in Hawaii. So he asked me to come in one day and comment on the translation. So I told him, I chose this verse, ma, because one standard thing in Kavya, Alankara, Rasa Shastra is to take, Abhinava takes this example also, which is Gacha Gachasi Chet Kant. So this is a standard that when you say go, go, okay, it will be very crude to say, oh, when you say go, you mean stay. It's not that simple. Okay. It is, there is serious go. So the Vyanjana, the Dhwani, does not negate the Vachyartha. The literal meaning is also there. Radha will be happy if he goes because she's scolding. So it is not like, the rapists say when she's resisted, she actually meant come. Not like that. That go means come, stay. But look at the subtlety. And I have always dreamt that someday some dancer will catch this. Krishna could have chosen Yai Keshava, Yai Keshava. Why Madhava? Because the word Madhava, the first letter is Ma, which in Sanskrit means don't. It's not explicit. In your, not first time, maybe once, in the 15 variations on Yai Madhava, just that line, like you said, variations based on the subsequent text, but coming back always, Yai Madhava. Because in your tisram, in your tihais that you are doing, you're coming at. And if you put the talam on Ma, sometimes you can do it such a way that I am saying Madhava, just your name, but I am saying Yahi Ma, which means Ma Yahi, Ma Gacha. Okay? And it's just there, right there, under your nose. But it waits for centuries for a particular dancer to discover this way. It's not a simple, straightforward pun. So I think, this explanation that you gave from your personal experience, nobody needs to, theorize this anymore. This is theory come alive. That's all. Thank you.
That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, Professor Arindam. Rukmini ji, any comments or do we take a question?
I learned so much from what you said. It's a privilege to have you listen. And I think that thing that when you said Yahi Madhava, even the tonality makes such a difference. But now that you explain it as well, I think the next time I dance it, it'll suddenly make even more sense to me. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't have to tell you, but never, ever, actually verbally, ever, under pressure of paparazzi also, do not explain, okay? Like, do not say that this is what is going on. Yeah. Because then all the Western scholars will say, oh, there's a pun in Madhava. There isn't. It's a pun that a particular performance Rukmini chooses to elaborate on. And in another time, something else will come. And partly, this becomes an act of grace from the other side, from Jayadeva's side, from Krishna's side. I really loved, I don't know whether you learned it from your guru, but this outside Bahiriva, okay, and dirt. And can you imagine if you meditate, and you don't have to sit and meditate like Shiva or your father in front of the TV. You can meditate in your dancing postures. That what does the darkness of his skin mean? This is the darkness that is attractive. But the culture has left this ambiguity because tamas is dark. Okay, Saraswati is white. There is an old South Indian poet, maybe she's Bengali, I don't know, Vijja. She's a Vijjaka or Vijja. She's a woman poet in Lakshman Sena's time. And she says proudly that all these shastras which have called Saraswati all white, they don't know. I am dark. How can Saraswati be all white? So there is this doubleness of darkness. Your outside will become as dark. Your mind will become as dark as your outside. This is, again, a love mixed scolding. And one can do so much with Bahiriva that you have done. It's just culturally, all of us who are not dancers, who are thinkers, but we should understand that we don't have to learn originality and improvisation Of course, we should be humble to jazz players. Jazz players do that. But simultaneous, strict training, and the more you train, the more you can be original. The more you are sticking to a single text, writing the 1000th commentary on Bhagavad Gita, the more you're original.
Yes.
This is the cultural specialty. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor. Rukmini ji, I think we have a few more questions we would take. I'm unmuting Shrestha. She's a doctoral scholar at the Institute and also a Kathak dancer. Shrestha, if you could, over to you. Keep your question, please.
My question was, when you try to look into the other forms apart from Vachika, especially when you're trying to put across the different interpretation of the Vachika, so how do you try to interplay with the remaining three elements then?
I didn't understand exactly what your question.
I was saying that when you try to look into a different interpretation of the Vachika, like having a different interpretation as a dancer to the text, so then how do you look into Satvika, then Angika, Aharya in that realm then?
So anything that is lyrics based, right, like a padam or a javali, the Vachika plays a bigger role, obviously, in that particular piece. So if it is something that is like, let's say, like the first half of a Varnam, now the Vachika is very small. It's just one line, and you repeat the same line many times. In between, there's jatis, there's swaras. So there is a lot of scope for what you do in between that, right? So there's 30 minutes, and there's just 4 lines of lyrics in the first half of a Varnam. Ideally, I mean, if you do it elaborately, it's 30 minutes. So, but in a Padam or a Javali or an Ashtapadi or any of these, the Vachika plays such a big role, right? So it's not about whether it's different or unique, but it's more about what the words reveal to you, right? And it's more about, as that character, why do you say what you say? And that's basically it. So then the other things will follow. How you balance Angika, or how that did Shrestha like leave?
I just got a message. Her internet got disconnected. I'm sorry.
So yeah, so basically, yeah. So I guess when she comes back, we can.
Yes. There is a recording. I'm sure if in that case she could probably, it's getting recorded anyway. One question from Sindhu. Sindhu is a postdoctoral scholar in Germany and also a dancer. She had a question. Sindhu.
Hi, everyone. Hi, ma'am. We all know how wonderful you are, what a wonderful dancer you are. But today I learned that you are a very entertaining speaker as well. I wish I had a literature and linguistic teacher, language teacher like you. I probably would have learned more languages if my teachers were as enticing as you. I have a question about rasa, because you said depends on my mood. If my mood is very cut today, you would of course dance and choreograph it, a particular line that way. I wonder if you want to portray a certain scenario. So let's say a song was set in, it was written in the 17th century. So of course the contemporary, whatever that time it was, it would have been written that way. Have you come across any directors, or have you choreographed in a way that you represent that time? Or do you want to portray the contemporary now, whatever the atmosphere it is now?
Okay. So this is a question that this is something that's relevant because we practice a classical form, right? So we have to understand that in Bharatnatyam, Kuchipudi, Kathak, all these forms, all the classical Indian forms, our Angika is not just a movement vocabulary, it is also a gestural vocabulary, right? So the gestural vocabulary is from a particular time period. So if you say the Natya Shastra, in the Natya Shastra, it will say if you tilt your head this side, it means here. If you drop your eyes here, it means this. So there are Vinyogas for all that, right? And then in that Abhinaya Darpana later, we have the Vinyogas for the Abhinaya Hastas, which which is different. That is more, I think that is more worldly, like water and all of that is. And even the Natya Shastra, most of the gestures are universally applicable, everything that they say, because it comes from a place of emotion. Emotions in any century don't change. You're happy, you're sad, you're angry, it's all the same. We're humans, it's going to continue forever. So, as long as it is, so we need to know when working with this particular form that I am not just a physical movement vocabulary, I am also a gestural vocabulary. We're so sensitive, right? When we watch Game of Thrones, there's one Starbucks cup on the table, and everyone's like, oh, there's a Starbucks cup. And people write about how they forgot to take that out. So there is an overall thing that is created um, because of that performance that is there, that is okay, because of the Natya Dharmi of that Game of Thrones. There is some magic allowed, there's something allowed, somebody can become something, somebody's head can grow again. So all these things you accept within the scope of that particular performance. Now within the scope of Bharatnatyam, we accept that this gestural vocabulary is from a particular time period, right? That being said, there are some things from today's laukika, from this world that we exist, like a shoulder shrug or saying bye like this, that are not too far. It's not that they couldn't have existed then, right? But at the same time, we make it accessible to this. And the gestural vocabulary, this is a very big question you ask, because it also changes because of the clothes we wear. You don't have the same gestures, you don't sit the same, you don't stand the same if you're wearing denim shorts and a tank top. You sit and stand and walk differently in a sari, in a gagra, in a pavade. It's different. And the gestural vocabulary also comes from the women wearing these kinds of clothes. Like you have this thing where you have, it's because this thing would be like a pallu on the other side, right? So all these things that are gestures, that are representation, oh, this is a woman, comes from the fact that there was this fabric that they would hold over their head because it was sunny or because they wanted to do something. So we need to accept that. And obviously, we are dancing for today's contemporary audience. I'm not dancing for some people who existed in the 17th century. So, how do I keep my vocabulary true to its roots while allowing it to change and morph? Right? So, I don't want to wear denim shorts, and this is me personally. I'm saying me. I don't want to wear denim shorts and a tank top. I would like to dance in a maybe a cotton sari, a simpler sari like I'm wearing now. And I will maybe use a few gestures that I'm used to from the world outside. But that being said, I decide to draw my lines somewhere today, and whatever feels right for now. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm sure it'll change. As we dance today, we never danced 100 years ago. Even 50 years ago, dance was not the same. It is going to change. We can't hold on. Art is not a pickle to put it in a bottle. It's going to change, and that's okay. But we have to understand and respect the roots it came from. That's all.
True. I think you what you mean by like keeping some stories the way it is, but also morphing and presenting it like you do with one of my favorite composition of yours, the choreography of yours is Saku Saku. Parvati telling Shiva, I'm done. I don't want to listen to your nonsense stories anymore, because that is, I can imagine that now that laukika now whatever atmosphere, but also understand when it was written. It's important, as you said, to preserve those stories the way they are, but also you put your own rasa into it, which is
No,
just
no, misunderstand. There's nothing of preservation here, because preservation becomes like an archaeological monument. That is not art. We don't want to preserve anything. We want to use what we have. Now I have this in my body. I have learned this vocabulary. I know this theory. I have a wealth of Puranic stories, I have so much literature, I have all of this. This is a part of the culture, nothing to preserve. This is what serves as the base inspiration for me to create, right?
Yes.
So, when there is to create, but we have to know that when you're talking about Shiva, Shiva already has certain qualities. You can't change. Will you accept in a Friends episode, Chandler is a funny guy? Next episode, this one becomes a funny guy and Chandler starts cleaning. Will you accept? It doesn't. It doesn't make sense. These are things. Even if you just think of them as, I don't know, characters, but they are not characters. They're part of a culture. This idea of Shiva and Devi and goddess. So you can't mess around with these unless you understand them. So if you say Shiva, you say Krishna, there are certain qualities that exist. Like some people say Sita fell in love with Ravana. I was like, then she's not Sita. That is my reasoning. I say she's no longer Sita. You can say she fell in love. That's fine. But that she is no longer Sita because Sita is Lakshmi. Sita comes with certain qualities. You can't suddenly change. In these TV sitcoms, you won't accept the change. Right? So I'm saying when we are dealing with a history, there are certain rules. That's all. And we are working with archetypes and culture and things that exist. You have to understand so that you can play with it, right? So I wrote about Shiva and Parvati fighting, but it's fine, it's a normal fight. I didn't say Shiva and Parvati got divorced and they left each other forever. They had a fight. And then she left, and Parvati was upset, and she was like, "Oh my God, what do I do?" So, and that's perfectly okay because I understand Shiva, I understand Parvati as it is in the Shiva Purana, as it is in this. So now, when you say Sako Sako Priya, that's actually not with Parvati, by the way. That is with just Inaika, uh, not Parvati. So even in that, there is you adhere to a time period. You decide. There's a well, there's water, there's a pot. It's a
True.
particular time period, and it allows it. But the emotion is the same, right? Because even now,
Yes.
you can say, "Go away. I don't want you." Even like with your boyfriend, some ex-lover, or something. You will all have some fights, and you don't want to talk to them. So it's the same thing. Sako Sako Priya. Bekagilla ho ninna se. I don't want you anymore. So we say it's from that time period. So we have a pot and we wear a sari. I don't think there's any difference actually. The emotion is the same. When you can watch Superman and He-Man and Snowman and all.
Thank you, Rukmini ji and Sindhu for that question. I think it gave a space for a lot of discussion. There is one comment from Deepti Navratna ji. She is a neuroscientist and a Carnatic vocalist. She says, "Thank you for the wonderful talk. Also, kudos on Udjare Kaga, an exceptional execution." Rukmini ji, open to a question, one more question, or do we wrap up the session?
I have time. It's fine.
Okay, I see Anirban ji, if you could introduce yourself in a line and keep the question brief. Over to you, sir.
Hello, I teach philosophy at North Bengal University. I really enjoyed your presentation. Thanks. I'll be very brief. I'll just get to the point. I wanted to ask you about the status, how you see Sattvika Abhinay. And can it actually be called Abhinay? Because the other kinds of Abhinay are more kind of using the craft and you can hone your skills over there. And Sattvika seems to happen in the moment there. It kind of creates the truth of the production. And it's a bit out of your control. You can kind of do the other things well and hope that Sattvika Abhinay happens. Would you like to see Sattvika Abhinay in that way? And would you see that as a kind of transcendental point for the actor when you become the character? And there are a lot of reports or people sometimes say that when they get into the costume, they feel like the character or they have those kind of things. So is Sattvika a special state of mind? And can we kind of approach it in that way? This is one question. And the other is, the second one is very quickly. You said Vachika, when you're kind of presenting to an audience who don't get that language, Vachika doesn't kind of hold much sway. So does it kind of reduce to Angika at that point of time, or does it still continue to be Vachika? Because as you are kind of saying in a language which maybe is not understandable, but people can make sense that you're using language and not just using body movements and so on and so forth. So these two questions. Thank you so much. Yeah, bye.
Okay. So the second one I'll address first because it's quicker. So that's very acute of you to observe that Vachika reduces to Aharya. I don't say reduces; it changes to Aharya. Sometimes I think that's where poetry makes a big difference. So when you use like your big vowels and small vowels and like chandas, and like when you have the right thing like jata kata hasam brahma, something like that, right? So even when the import is not understood, the words themselves provide aharya and they reflect the meaning of what the word is saying. So for those who don't understand, it will become aharya. In my opinion, I do feel that because it is no longer vachika, because it's not doing the job of vachika any longer in that context. As far as satvika is concerned, um, this is a big question. So let me try to answer it as quickly as possible. The first thing is, it is not that satvika can't be cultivated. It can be. You can, and it is cultivated by developing imagination. It is not something that just happens by chance, because then there would be, the theater would be a madhouse instead of a theater. Then when they went over and they suddenly became Rama with the rage, Ravana would die on stage. If Satvika overcame him, Narasimha would kill the Hiranyakashipu, and people would be like stunned. So satvika is not something that overpowers you in that sense. Satvika does happen by cultivating imagination, by learning emotional recall, when the entire space is clear to me, when the characters are clear, when who I'm conversing is clear, when my intention is clear, it's a developed skill to be able to see that and respond to an imaginary person, an imaginary place, an imaginary situation. So satvika is cultivated, and it happens when the mind of the actor or performer is calm and is available to take on the character fully. Now I'm actually writing about this, funnily enough, so maybe you can read about it. But there is a point in Satvika that when the body is fooled by this emotion and you shed tears or you tremble or your face becomes red hot, it's not that we forget the rhythm. I don't forget that I need to finish by the time the alap ends. I don't forget the words. I don't continue to break down as Radha and cry and sob on stage as Krishna leaves. Krishna leaves, music ends, Radha finish, snap back, done, over. So Satvika is only Satvika. This is my argument that I make, because there is a witness present throughout. If there is no witness present throughout, it would be emotional indulgence, just the same as our life. And if Satvika is emotional indulgence, it would not only have the opposite effect on the audience, where there is rasa bhanga. Rasa will not be created. If when you begin to cry, it just happens to you and it overtakes you, there will be rasa bhanga, because the audience will feel uncomfortable. They're not going to be happy at the end of the performance. So satvika is satvika because of the fact, this is where the philosophy comes in, that we view satvika the same way that we are meant to view life in the Vedantic concept. As we play the role of Rukmini, we play the role of this, and we experience the emotions to the fullest, but we have a witness that says, hey, this emotion's done, all right, move on. But it's harder in life, it's easier on stage. So on stage, it's very easy. Radha's crying, Krishna's leaving, switch, Radha, Gopa. Radha, don't cry. Radha, again crying. Sobbing, switch, Gopa, Radha, don't cry. So now I'm playing two characters. If it's overwhelming me, how will I switch to the Gopa? Saying, Radha, don't cry, it's okay. I won't be able to. I'll be Radha, and then the audience will be like, oh my God, what happened? Something wrong with her? That's what will happen. the audience. So Satvika is only Satvika because the witness is present. It's not just because your body responds to the imaginary situation. It is also because the witness is present. And that is why they say that is it's an experience, or they say Saguna Brahmana, whatever, So that's why they say that, because even for the, not only for the performer, but also for the audience, in Satvika, that is the only thing that happens at the same time in a shared moment of time and space. In that time and space, the performer experiences that, the audience also empathizes in the same way, but you leave the theater saying, wow, that was a great performance as an audience member. But they need not be Satvika on stage for rasa to be there. Angika, Vachika, Aharya can do the job and you can have wonderful rasa.
Thank you so much, Rukmini, for that elaborate and lucid answer, and Anirbanji for that question. Arindam sir had something to add. Sir, if you could make it quick, I'm unmuting you.
Anirban, I'm partly addressing it to Anirban, my fellow philosophy colleague from North Bengal. It is Abhinaya. It is not identification. No. And she has made 4 points. And when we write or we talk about how does bhava becomes rasa? Remember, these are the very points. You have to keep the tala, you have to not identify, etc. Very Brechtian points about distancing, maintained by Abhinavagupta in refuting Lolata's view. Lolata's view was this: if you enhance the emotion, intensify, then the bhava becomes rasa. No, that's rejected. And you get this beautiful theory that we were just hearing. Because of these 3 or 4 reasons, you have to switch, so it remains very much. Sattvika is also Abhinaya, okay? Not faking it, but still Abhinaya, because the basis of it, the dancer's emotional intensity is in the Shantarasa, which is always kept. Okay, the more Shantarasa you have, the more you can show extreme intense emotions, because you are always aware that there is an outside audience. It is a performance. It is not your private emotional expression. And it's a complete no-no to be overwhelmed by that emotion. That's the refutation of Lolata you just heard from why you have to go from Lolata to Shankuka. And then it is not just and there is Sadharanikarana. So these steps that you see in textbooks were just enacted just now with your question and the answer. And that shows Abhinava's great wisdom. She just said, the more calm you are, the more you can show the rage of Bhima. You can even start, frothing from your mouth. But your heart is calm. And that is why that distance enables you. That's the magic that will take many more books and performance to fully explain. It is Abhinaya. Thank you.
Now, when I was talking about that it's not in control, I was not saying that, I was pointing to the fact that it's totally not in control in terms of bringing it on. I was not saying that I have to be overblown by it or the actor is overblown by it. It's not totally in control. One can dress up, it's in control. One can do the adequate gestures through craftsmanship and all that. And Vachika, one can deliver the lines. But getting that Sattvika state might not be totally in control. That's what I was kind of putting on to. But of course, it's linked to, as you explained, that it's linked to all 3 and comes up as I think that they on a lucky day, and may not happen always. And the audience also kind of participates in that and feels the truth of that production. And that's the connection. And both the audience and the actor know that this is something that's happening there. This is not I have to carry on and actually kill someone. So that distancing is also there. And at the same time, that participation and that feeling of being in the truth of the moment is also there in both of them. And that's kind of connects and creates the moment for everyone. And that feeling of Russia also comes from that participation, I think. I don't know, of course, yeah. Thank you, Arindam. Thank you, Rukmini. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Anirban. Thank you, Professor Arindam, for your remarks. And with this, I would request Shankar sir for his final comments and remarks, sir. Shankar, I think, sir, you just unmuted yourself.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you, Rukmini. What a spellbinding talk. I'm refraining from asking any questions because I am not left with any questions. If I remember any questions, I can actually contact you later to clarify. But even as a poet, I got immensely benefited by your talk. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Shankar Anna.
Thank you, Dr. Shankar. Rukmini ji, any final comments, or do we? And if there are any further, I see a few more questions, but keeping time, we're closing the question and answer session. If there is anything you could please write to us, we'll take it to the speaker and revert back with answers. Rukmini ji, any final comments before we officially give the word of thanks?
No, I think it was a pleasure to be here, and it's always nice to speak to people who have, who get the import completely and who ask questions that make me think as well. So thank you so much for having me, Shankarana, and thank you for all the, I learned a lot from all your questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rukmini ji. On behalf of our institute, the director, I would like to convey gratitude to today's speaker, Rukmini Vijayakumar, for introducing us to the world of Abhinaya and poetry from a dancer's perspective. And I would like to thank Sangeeta ma'am, who's the head of School of Humanities, for her constant love and support. Thank you so much, ma'am. And thank you to the audience who are all present here. For being here with us and contributing towards the discussion and making it more interesting. And hope you all continue to keep yourself safe and healthy. Looking forward to your presence in our upcoming sessions. Thank you so much. Namaste.